A bitter wind howled outside. It was a night for staying in, huddled by the fire. Detective Priya, however, found herself facing the biting cold. She stood before the imposing door of a luxury apartment. Inside, a life had ended.
The call had come in just an hour ago. A young man found dead in his own home. No signs of forced entry, making it a locked room mystery.
Priya took a deep breath and entered. The air inside was cold and still. The apartment, lavishly furnished, felt more like a museum than a home. In the center of the room, bathed in the eerie glow of a single lamp, sat Rohan. He was slumped in an armchair, facing a grand, ornately framed mirror. The mirror, however, was cracked. A spiderweb of fissures spread across its surface, distorting the reflection.
His eyes were wide open, staring into the fractured reflection. His expression was frozen in a mask of terror. What had he seen in the mirror in his final moments? What had driven him to such fear?
The questions hung heavy in the air, unanswered. On the floor lay painting supplies, brushes scattered like fallen soldiers. Canvases leaned against the walls, portraits staring blankly into the room. Rohan, Priya knew, was an artist. His work had gained a notoriety recently, though not for its beauty. It was the subjects of his paintings that drew attention. They were people who had vanished, disappearing without a trace.
She approached the body cautiously. Her eyes were drawn to a playing card pinned to Rohan's chest. The Queen of Hearts stared back at her, her painted smile seeming cruel in the dim light. The word liar was scrawled across the card in a shaky hand. Was it a message from the killer or a final desperate plea from the victim?
The scene was unusual, even theatrical. It felt staged, a carefully arranged tableau designed to send a message. But what was the message? And who was the intended recipient?
She examined the card, the handwriting, the positioning. Every detail was a clue, a piece of the puzzle.
Rohan, Priya learned, was a recluse. He lived alone, his only companions his paints and canvases. He shunned interviews and public appearances, preferring the company of his subjects. And what subjects they were! His recent series, Faces of the Unseen, had sent chills down the spines of art enthusiasts and critics alike. The portraits were undeniably brilliant, capturing the essence of their subjects with unsettling accuracy. But it was the eyes that truly held the viewer captive. There was a depth, a haunting sadness in them that spoke of a darkness within.
The subjects she knew had all disappeared shortly after their portraits were completed.
The police had initially dismissed it as coincidence. People went missing all the time after all. But the whispers had started, whispers of a curse, of a darkness that clung to Rohan and his art. And now Rohan himself was dead. The whispers grew louder, feeding on the fear and uncertainty that surrounded the case. Priya spent hours poring over files, news clippings, and witness statements.
She studied photographs of the missing, their faces etched in her mind.
There was a pattern, she realized, a chilling connection between them and Rohan. They were all connected to him in some way, a former classmate, a neighbor, a shopkeeper he frequented. As the night wore on, Priya felt a growing unease. The apartment felt oppressive, the silence broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock. The portraits seemed to watch her every move, their eyes following her as she searched for clues. She discovered a hidden room, a small studio tucked away behind a bookshelf.
Inside, she found Rohan's secret sketchbook. It was filled with sketches, quick, expressive lines that somehow conveyed more life than his finished portraits.
The sketches were all of people Priya recognized from the files of missing persons. But there were others, people who hadn't disappeared yet. Priya flipped through the pages, her heart pounding in her chest. Each face stared back at her, filled with a haunting familiarity. She stopped at the last page. It was blank, except for a single line scrawled at the bottom, "The one who sees the truth." A chill ran down her spine.
Was she the one Rohan had foreseen? Was she destined to be his next subject?
As if in answer, her phone buzzed. It was a message, a single image attached. The image showed a sketch. It was Priya, her back to the viewer, staring into the cracked mirror. The star was unmistakably Rohan's.
But how was this possible? He was dead. Had he drawn this before his death? Or was someone else responsible, someone who knew her every move?
The lights in the apartment flickered. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, its sound echoing through the silent rooms. Priya turned towards the mirror, her hand instinctively reaching for her weapon. Her reflection stared back at her, pale and drawn in the flickering light, but something was different. Behind her, in the depths of the mirror, a shadow moved. Priya spun around, her heart pounding in her chest, but there was nothing there. The room was empty.
Had she imagined it? Was the stress of the case finally getting to her?
She turned back to the mirror. The shadow was gone. Taking a deep breath, she tried to calm her racing heart. It was just her imagination, it had to be. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that she was a pawn in a game she didn't understand. The cracked mirror seemed to mock her, its fractured surface reflecting her fear back at her.
Priya knew one thing for sure. This was far from over. This case, this chilling mystery had just begun.
Priya stared into the fractured reflection of the room, a sense of foreboding settling over her. The shadow, real or imagined, was a chilling reminder. She was not alone in this macabre puzzle. Someone or something was watching her, toying with her. The Queen of Hearts, with its accusatory liar, seemed to mock her from the floor.
She would find the truth, no matter the cost.